All about the Russian Revolution. Nicholas II becomes the Tsar of Russia in the year 1894. A Tsar is basically just a monarch of Eastern Europe. Around this time, industrialization had started to expand, slowing down agriculture. Karl Marx brought them communism. Communism is the idea that everything should be collectively owned by everyone, giving and taking what they needed. It also sought to get rid of social classes, and the economy should be controlled by the central government. This ideology spread through the working class, and they started demanding better representation. The government was pretty bad at handling all these common issues, but one of their biggest issues was in 1904 when the Japanese started expanding its influence, and Russia didn't like that so much. Japan decided that they should have a war, and that would work, and continued to beat the living daylight out of Russia. Sergei Vide signed a peace treaty and gave up some chunk of land over here-ish. People started to get pretty salty at Tsar Nicholas II for not leading the Russian people into a modern society. In 1905, a large worker protest led by Father Gapon marched to present a petition to the emperor. The Guard fired upon them, although a small chunk of them didn't. This day was known as Bloody Sunday. This sparked a fire of riots and even some military mutinies. The peasants, workers, and a few military members led an attack on the Tsar, forcing the government to become a constitutional monarchy. In 1914, Austria-Hungary decided to declare war on Serbia, but Russia was allied with Serbia and declared war on Austria-Hungary. But Germany was allied with them, so they declared war on Russia, and boom! World War I. Because of this war, St. Petersburg was renamed to Petrograd as to sound less German and more Russian. Nicholas II decided that it would be a good idea to appoint himself as head of the army, which was not a good idea, leaving his wife Alexandria in charge with her advisor Grigory Rasputin. She wasn't popular for being German and also creating government instability by constantly appointing new government ministers. It was decided that Empress Alexandria was under the influence of Rasputin, so they assassinated him. His body was later dug up and burned just because they thought that he might return from the dead, because they're weird like that. Over on the front lines, the military was taking heavy losses, peasants were being used as cannon fodder, and people were getting angry at the Tsar. The military had started to consist of mostly working class, and peasants started ranking to officers faster and faster. Nobles and politicians told Nicholas to relieve Alexandria of her duties, but they declined. They soon realized that it was the Tsar that might be creating the problems. People started protesting against the war. Workers went on strike. The government started sending out rations of bread, and the bread makers went on strike. It all snowballed into a February revolution. Nicholas thought that he could use the army to stop the protesters, but the 4th Company of the Replacement Regiment joined the protest, saying, "We fight for the people." Other mutinies followed the next day. Because of the protest, a provisional committee of the State of Duma was set up as a replacement government, and to restore order. Nicholas' advisors convinced Nicholas to advocate, and he actually did. He attempted to heir his brother to the throne, but he refused, knowing that it would probably be a bad idea. The provisional government was set up by the liberals and socialists, who wanted a democratically elected leader. They placed Nicholas and his family under protected custody. Now that the Tsar was gone, a man known as Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia. He formed the Petrograd Soviet Party and called for the overthrow of the provisional government. The provisional government decided not to end World War I, creating more protesting. The biggest protesters was Lenin's communist faction known as the Bolsheviks. The government opened fire upon the protesters, killing 160 and wounding 400. This is known as the July Days. The provisional government decided that this would be a perfect time to arrest all prominent Bolsheviks, such as Leon Trotsky. Lenin fled to Finland to escape capture. A socialist revolutionary named Alexander Kerensky became the head of the government. He ended up continuing the war and releasing all political prisoners. In August, Alexander and his military general, Lavr Kornilov, kind of fell apart, and Lavr ordered an army to Petrograd to restore order. Alexander tried to get him to stop, but Kornilov refused. He sought the help of the now-released Bolsheviks and their Red Guard. They ended up stopping Lavr's attack on Petrograd, and the now-freed Trotsky became the chairman of the Soviets. All the workers were getting fed up. They had become Soviets and took over their means of production. The hammer and sickle came into use here, representing the industrial and agricultural workers respectively. Lenin returned to Russia once again to try to overthrow the government. The military was being led by Trotsky as they planned an armed assault. Since the Bolsheviks had military and railway control, Alexander and the provisional government were stuck. The plans became public to increase participation. October 25th, November 7th for the Gregorian calendar. The October revolutions begin. Ships came to the support of the Red Guard, captured most of the important parts of the city. Instead of becoming trapped within Petrograd, Alexander escaped, seeking reinforcements. Vladimir Lenin shouted that the provisional government had been overthrown as they moved into the Winter Palace. There had not been many killings, so the Red Guard had just kept increasing numbers at the palace till the Royal Guard abandoned their posts and surrendered. The Bolsheviks were now in control, and Lenin declared himself ruler, to many dismay. But they were soon won over. Kerensky brought back anti-revolutionaries and fired upon the Russian troops, which made people dislike the provisional government even more. Lenin announced 3 decrees: the decree on peace, which took Russia out of the war; the decree on land, which abolished private land and distributed it to peasants; then the decree on workers, which added a minimum wage. He also made universal healthcare and education, while also increasing women's rights, along with accepting a declaration of independence from Finland and moving the capital to Moscow. But not all was good. The Soviets brutally executed all members of the royal family in 1918. The revolution is finished, but Russia is just getting started.